Get Artisan. Get Artisan. I'm a divorce lawyer. About 10 years ago, I took some time out of law. Divorce kind of gets on top of you afterwards. It's pretty brutal work. And I wrote a couple of books on how we can argue better about dispute resolution, negotiation, about creating negotiated outcomes that really serve the families that really suit the families that we were serving. And as I was doing this, I was doing more talks around the books that I'd written, and I got this request to do a talk at a big conference up in Edinburgh. And they wanted a talk which would kind of like fire people up, mediators, family lawyers, collaborative lawyers, negotiators, fire them up because they had the same problem that I suspect everyone in this room has. How can we do more of the work that we do really well? And how can we market that? And essentially, how can we sell it? How can we exchange this brilliant stuff that we do and our knowledge and our skills, and how can we exchange that in return for money, payment? And so I thought about this for a while, and I came up with this idea. And it was the idea of, I'm always amazed by this, the idea of the farmer's market. You know the farmer's market, you've been to the farmer's market. And you go to the farmer's market and you can buy a loaf of bread, sourdough bread, rye bread, and you would pay £4.50, £5 for this loaf, and you wouldn't resent that at all. You'd be like quite pleased about that. You'd be like pleased with your transaction. You can't wait to get it home and tuck into this loaf. And so the question is, what is it about this product, the sourdough bread, for example, or like those olives from that vendor? What is it about those products and those vendors that they're able to sell their goods at a premium? And who would like to do more of that? To sell their goods, more goods, and to sell it at a premium? Anyone up for that? So I dug down into this idea of, what is it? Yeah, I'll stop in a minute, don't worry. So I thought, what is it that these craftspeople are doing that we're not? And I had a look around into this notion of the craftsperson. What is the mindset that they bring to their work, to their commerce, that enables them to sell that loaf? You could buy a sunblessed 80p at Tesco's, 80p. I could buy that, or I can spend £5 happily on a sourdough loaf. And so as I dug into this idea of the craftsperson, I distilled some ideas from it. If we talk about the craftsperson, if you like, the archetype of the craftsperson is Geppetto. Do you remember Geppetto from Pinocchio? And the idea of Geppetto, if you remember the story, is Geppetto was like this excellent artisanal wood carver. And he would make toys, wouldn't he? And he had this one toy in particular, Pinocchio. And do you remember his like prayer, his wish at the end of the night, just before he turned in? Just that he would have a boy, that he would have a real child. And then through the art of fable and legend and fiction, that puppet came to life. And that ties in with this idea of the craftsperson. What is craftsmanship? I went to a book by Richard Sennett called The Craftsman, and there are a couple of ideas that just serve this talk well. He says that craftsmanship is the desire to do a job well for its own sake. So this is work which means a lot to us, work that we're really vested in. We know what we do. We know that we do it well. We know that this can serve people, whether it's customers, whether it's families, whether it's organizations. And we long to do that work, not for the sake. I was talking to someone earlier and I said, how's the business going? And they said, well, it pays the mortgage. And I pulled them up on it. Because this can't just be about just paying a mortgage. If it's just about paying a mortgage, we could do anything. We could do anything. We could make it a heck of a lot easier for ourselves. Just go and get a job somewhere instead of trying to do this entrepreneurship thing. So it's got to be more than just paying a mortgage. It's the desire to do a job well for its own sake, and it's the desire to breathe life into noble or beautiful work that inspires. That works, doesn't it? To breathe life into noble or beautiful work that inspires your customers. I'm always like noticing examples of this, and I just had to check out the place. Who knows the Folly gift shop up on the Bailgate? Yeah. Who's the lady who runs that? Josie, is it? And do you follow her on social media? And she's amazing, isn't she? I don't follow her, but my wife does. And my wife would be like looking at her phone, she'd be like cooing at something. And I say, what is it? I say, oh, Folly have just like posted a new thing, like a new gift or item that she's just got in. And for her, this is her work that inspires other people. She curates this collection of goods and gifts to sell to people. And then she shares it, but she gets genuinely excited, doesn't she? And she has like her unwrapping videos and everything. It's genius. So Josie, there's an example. So let's unpack this. Forget Artisan, mindset. Rule 3 always helps us. So we're going to be working on connection, complexity, and autonomy. Normally when I'm speaking at an event, I try to get here to like listen to all of the talks. And one reason why I do that is because it avoids me the kind of panic I had about an hour ago when I got here and I was looking through the slides for the presentations I've missed. And Lizzie, I was looking at your slides, and your slides also mention complexity and autonomy. And I was thinking, oh crap, this is a problem. And I was thinking, well, do I just like rewrite the whole thing? And I was pretty close to it, I can tell you. But I was speaking to a few people and they said, no, it's different. So I hope it is. I think what we will find is that this stuff will overlay the material that you had before lunch that I missed, but also the stuff that we were just talking about on the panel right here. So let's have a look and see how these pan out. Connection also has 3 components to it. Connection with self. Connection with self. Connection with our professional community, our peers, our colleagues across the board, and connection with tools and materials. Connections with self. It's essential that we do work that means something to us. It's really hard to sell something that we don't believe in. It's really hard to sell something that we don't believe in. So do work that means something to us. Simon Sinek had his book a while ago, didn't he, about begin with why, so, explain why you do what you do. There's a chap who I play golf with sometimes, I've forgotten his name, which is Nick Rossington. Nick Rossington sells WPA health insurance. And you speak to Nick about how he got into doing what he does. And he'll explain to you, he explains to everyone, about 8 years ago, 5 years ago, his daughter was diagnosed with bone cancer. Seriously ill, and the state NHS provision just didn't cut it. And so they switched to the private sector. And in a flash, he utterly believed in the merits of private health. And so he transitioned into marketing that, got himself a franchise, and is doing very well from it. Not least because he's got that utter conviction about why he's doing it and his belief in it. So Simon Sinek spoke about that. Before Simon Sinek, there was another book, but it was very marginal within the mediation sector, the legal sector, and they were talking about the making of a mediator. And here they start from the center of the circle as well, and they say start with your own core values and beliefs. What are your core values and beliefs? So I sell divorce law. That's tricky. But one of the reasons why I do that is because actually I value the family that I grew up in. The family was always very important. When you're growing up in the 70s, things were like really different. When you're growing up in the 70s, you would live in absolute dread. Either of the 4-minute warning. Oppenheimer is like pushing all kinds of buttons for me at the moment. But you lived in dread either of the 4-minute warning or your parents having that conversation, your mum and I are separating, your dad and I are separating. It was like there's a massive stigma to it. And so just like seeing what happened to friends and such like, and their families coming to an end and going through separation crises, I just knew that I wanted to help people transition out of marriage into post-separation in much more healthy ways. So what are your core values and beliefs? That then informs your theories. So my conflict resolution work is about theories, about communication, about, I nearly said empathy, but I don't use that word, about compassion, about understanding the other person from their own framework. And that then informs your practice. So a lot of my work is dealt with out of court as opposed to litigation in court. And that then informs the outcomes that you get. So an early precursor to Simon Sinek, but make sure your work is connected to yourself. And if it is, you've got the strongest foundation to build upon. Connection as well with your professional community. Richard Sennett talks about the guilds. We tend to forget about the guilds these days, but the guilds were a real thing in the 16th, 17th century, even earlier. And the guilds, of course, were these organizations, and every profession would have their guild, whether it's the silversmiths, whether it's the clockmakers, whether it's the brewers, whatever it might be. And you would have the guild, and the guild would both drive best practice. It would kind of hold you and practitioners and your colleagues to accountability, but it would also work on development. And within the guild system, you would have something of a hierarchy. It's rather unfashionable these days to think about a hierarchy, but I think there was a positive element to this. So you would have, if you like, the apprentice within the guild, that individual just starting out, finding their way, learning the craft. So you'd have the apprentice, and then after you've done your apprenticeship, you'd then go into this middle ground, which was called the journeyman. The journeyman. And the journeyman was expected, so called the journeyman, because they were expected to go from town to town, from market to market, if you like, touting their wares, touting their services. So again, you would develop, and because there was this idea of mobility and going from town to town, this would also help the guild to pollinate and cross-pollinate ideas and new innovations. And then with time, you pay your dues, you continue to learn, and you then become, and forgive the gender-based language, you then become a master in your field. And that was, if you like, the epitome. Very often, to achieve this master stage within the guild, you would have to put together a portfolio or examples of work, or you'd have to like draw upon thinking about the feedback and such, like the Google reviews. But you would need to have like this body of work that you could present to the guild to show that you've really reached the top of your game. And again, I think that this idea can help all of us in marketing. Don't be ashamed if we're just starting out on the marketing. Don't be ashamed of recognizing our place as being the apprentice. And go to more conferences like this. Speak to the people in the room about what they do. Learn from the journeymen and learn from the masters above them as well. If you're the journeyman, then start speaking at these events. Start sharing your experiences so the next generation can come up below you. And do you know what? As you do that, then your credibility within a marketplace goes through the roof as well. And if you're the master, then again, don't close yourself off. Share the information, share best practice, continue to innovate. Also, if you're the apprentice, this is what I tell to my colleagues at work. I have a paralegal, and I'm kicking his backside because he's quite comfortable doing apprentice level work. And I'm saying, I need you out of that seat. I need you out of that seat into the journeyman seat, not least so I can get another apprentice in there and train them up. See how that works? So if you are that person, don't put yourself down. Don't want any mock humility or anything. If you're no longer an apprentice, be confident in what you've learned so far and live it out. So the guilds. If you don't like the guilds in your system, we've got like the Solicitors Regulation Authority, and we've got resolution, and they're a bit ho-hum, they're a bit stagnant, they're highly conservative. They don't really do it for me. It is so easy now just to build up your own guild. Have a look. Who is in your field? Who are the journeymen? Who are the masters within your field? Get in touch with them. The genuine ones will be more than happy to share. So, connection with self, with your profession. The artisan has a true connection with their tools and materials. We're going to talk later on. I'm going to share a quote from a chap called John Ruskin. John Ruskin was a 19th century writer and social commentator. He was like the Jeremy Clarkson of the day, thoroughly objectionable, but he could communicate in a really passionate way that got attention. And one of John Ruskin's many bêtes noires was the Industrial Revolution, and what the Industrial Revolution had done in a sense of dehumanizing craftspeople. Before the Industrial Revolution, everything was done, yes, on a very small scale. So you didn't have those multipliers, you didn't have those scale economies. But the people who were doing the work were connected in a very visceral, physical way. The cooper, who was making the barrel, if you like, they were dealing with hammers and nails and the wood and the soak in the wood and all of these things. The blacksmith, likewise, pounding, the heat, the sweat, if you think about all of those things, the baker, all of these ideas. So they're connected in a physical way with the materials that they're using, with the products that they're serving up, and essentially with their tools. We've been hearing quite a bit this afternoon, haven't we, about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a new tool. Artificial intelligence will scare the heck out of a lot of people. I suspect lawyers are terrified about artificial intelligence, and do you know what? They should be. They should be. But we need to learn that artificial intelligence is just a tool, and when we're able to use it well, then it will reap rewards. So the craftsperson gets to know their tools. If you think about me and my work, my tools are not just the precedent cases, previously decided cases that I can then bring to bear, but also the theory in the adjacent field about negotiation dynamics, a degree of psychology, a bit about what influences people, what motivates people, bias, so on and so forth. So get curious about this, connect with the tools that you need in your field, whatever that might be. This is my sourdough. These are my banneton, and this is the dough that I made. This is a photo from a year or 2 years ago. People who follow me on LinkedIn will know that occasionally I share my sourdough baking, and typically it'll be a loaf like this or some other photos coming up. And the reason why I do that, and the reason why I put that out there on LinkedIn, which isn't Facebook, let's face it, but I put it out there on LinkedIn to say this thing: there's more to me than just family law. There's more to me than family law. I've got a life outside of that. We were talking about authenticity earlier, about bringing your whole self to the game. I think if we just box ourselves off as being the shopkeeper, the cheesemonger, the divorce lawyer, whatever it might be, then we deny our market a full appreciation of what it is that we do and who we are as people. The craftsman is all about that. It's all about the relationship with their market and with their peers. Has anyone been to the sourdough cellar at the Orthodox Church at the end of Burton Road? You've been there? You've got to get there early, right?
Bread and cheese, man.
Bread and cheese. So this is, and again here, this chap, he's one of the O'Meara. The O'Meara family have been doing foodstuffs in Lincoln for decades. As I understand it, O'Meara Senior had a fish and chip shop, and then Kate O'Meara ran comestibles for a while up on the Bailgate, which is where I met my wife, 25 years ago. And now she runs the Cheese Society. If you want like an artisanal cheese vendor, go to the Cheese Society, which is now run, as I understand it, by Kate O'Meara's daughter, if I've got that correct. Kate O'Meara's brother runs the bread and cheese van at the Orthodox Church. He will turn up with his van at the church. I don't know what time he gets there. 8 o'clock, is it? 7 o'clock? 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and he rolls up the shutters on the back of his van, and he puts out this gazebo, and he puts out a board in front of like handwritten notes. I don't think he does any advertising other than word of mouth, and he sells out within 90 minutes, 2 hours, and he's amazing, isn't he? And there's a queue of people. Although there's a queue of people, he has always got time for you, hasn't he? He's always got time, and you are just like drawn into his craft. What do you do? What's this? What's the difference between that loaf and that loaf? How do you make this loaf? Because I got my sourdough, I was on a bit of a downer with my sourdough. My starter wasn't working very well, and I was able to have a chat with him and have a few suggestions. And so you have this relationship with the vendor, with the craftsperson. So tools and materials, these are mine. This is probably my best ear on a loaf of bread ever. Now, I bake. Why do I bake? Remember what I said about core values and beliefs? Yep, family, love my family now that I've got 2 nearly adult children and my wife. What's really important to me is being able to feed them really well. And so just out of that, I got involved in bread baking, 10, 12, none of this like Johnny come lately, COVID sourdough. But I got into bread baking 10, 12 years ago. And I was making like just a white starter with yeast. And I got pretty good at it. But then as I got good at that, I could have just like carried on making that loaf. But there's a curiosity. In the craftsman, there's always a curiosity. What is the next level of complexity? What is the next stage? Okay, I can do this and I can do it well. What does it mean to push myself onto the next level? And it must have taken me like 5 years to make a decent sourdough loaf. And even then, this one, you see this thing here? This is called like the ear, and this is like the holy grail. This is what you are striving for when you're making sourdough. You want your loaf formed in such a way, you want your cooking conditions to be in such a way with the appropriate level of humidity, the right moisture level within the dough, so that you get this peeling back, and then you get this almost burnt crust, the ear, on a sourdough. And that is, if you like, the holy grail. That is what you were looking for. So when this one came out of the oven, that's going straight onto LinkedIn, because I'm going to share that. I'm going to celebrate that. So complexity. The craftsperson embraces complexity. We can be here and we can listen to the things we're talking about, and we can think to ourselves, sounds really complex. The idea of like integrating AI into your CRM, I haven't got a freaking clue. And that can be like a massive turn-off for any of us. Don't let that be the case. Get curious about it. What does that mean? I wonder what the impact of that would be. What would be the outcomes if I were to do that? What is the potential? How can that help me? How can that serve me? So we need to step into the complexity. I hate that notion of keep it simple, stupid. That whole KISS mentality, keep it simple, stupid. Lizzie had a brilliant slide about the greatest fiction is that the world is simple. It really isn't. It's really tough. It's really complicated. There's a model, leadership model called adaptive leadership. And adaptive leadership says that in times of change, and there's plenty of that around at the moment, in times of change, we are where our whole environment, the whole commercial environment, if you like, changes. All of a sudden, our core has shifted. Yeah. So if you think about our comfort zone, if that's in the middle of what we're comfortable with, we've got all of this protection around us, all of this comfort, and our comfort zone is in the middle. When the environment shifts, our comfort zone is here, but all of a sudden our whole environment has moved over here, and now we find ourselves at the extreme of actually what we can tolerate. And there's a real temptation for people to say, oh, it's simple, and to deny the complexity in a situation. Because if we can deny the complexity, well, it's not that bad, it's not that complicated, it's really straightforward, it will work out, it's not a problem. If we okay it away, then we can like just rest again, and we can go to, if you like, an idle state. But that doesn't help us, and it doesn't help what we're trying to do. Instead, we need to be able to preserve ourselves at the outer edges of what we're comfortable with. Because when we preserve ourselves at the outer edges of what we're comfortable with, say for example in terms of complexity, then change and adaptation happens. And this is where innovation comes in, going back to the guilds and the craftsmen. Because we're there at the extreme. If we're here doing what we've always done all the time, we're not going to learn. So we need to take ourselves out of that comfort zone, go to the tolerable edges of distress, and that's where innovation and change and growth will happen. So embrace complexity. This talk, I've been giving this talk for 10 years now. And one of the spin-offs on it was how do we deal with complexity, and how do we deal with this question of just not having the answers? And I came up with this idea of the League of Not Knowing. I was giving a talk to a group of web developers. They wanted a talk which was called about uncertainty. So I wrote this talk called The Delicious Discomfort in Not Knowing. I was booked to do the talk 3 months before the event. 3 months before the event. So I do the talk, write it at least, I'm ready to deliver it. 2 weeks before the event, the conference, they've just been told they're all being made redundant in 4 weeks. And I've got a talk which is like The Delicious Discomfort in not knowing. Yay! Anyway, so we pushed it through, and it really struck home, just in that sense that it's okay not to know. It's okay not to know. It's okay not to know about marketing. It's okay not to know how you're going to reach that next threshold, because once we recognize we don't know, apprentice level, then we give ourselves permission to find out and to ask questions and get curious. So I came up with this idea of the League of Not Knowing. I had like a landing page and everything. It very quickly got to 300, 500 people signed up to it. And ironically, I didn't know what to do with it, so it just withered on the vine. But I'm thinking about starting it up again, the League of Not Knowing, and just like having curious travelers coming together, just to think about, well, I don't know about this, and just to cope, to find support with other people, coping with complexity. Richard Sender's got a thing to say about complexity. How do we cope with it? One advice, he says, the craftsman is able to imagine a successful outcome at the same time as temporarily suspending the need for one. He talks, for example, about the context of a musician. Anyone here play a musical instrument? Yeah. Okay, a few of us. Cool. And like when you go to a new piece of music, and it's there written in front of you on the sheet music, and it's particularly like you're stretching yourself, you're still learning, it's really difficult, and you practice and it sounds awful, just awful. It's hard to perceive any tune or any sense in this at all, but we persevere, and as we persevere, our dexterity and our familiarity with the piece grows. And the only way that we are able to cope with that is because we are able to imagine what this piece of music is going to sound like when we're able to play it, and at the same time we are able to give ourselves enough grace not to be able to perform at that virtuoso level first time we come to a piece of music. So complexity, it's okay. Imagine a successful outcome at the same time as temporarily suspending the need for one. If we think about my divorce clients, a real challenge that they've got is they have this absolute need for certainty. First time they come to see me, they need to know what the outcome is going to be. And I can like give them an idea, but I can't guarantee what the outcome is going to be. And so, it's always filled with caveats. And a big part of my work is sharing this idea with them about just having to temporarily suspend that need for certainty. We're working towards it. Certainty will come. There will be a resolution and there will be an outcome. Just as with your marketing endeavors, there will be an outcome, and it will be emergent. And we don't need to have that at the end of this conference today. Rest assured, keep doing these things, keep plugging away, and it will reveal. Complexity, identify and work with the resistance, says Sennett, which always reminds me of Bill Murray in Caddyshack. The idea of Bill Murray in Caddyshack is he's this greenkeeper at a golf course, and they've got a big competition, and then this golf course is inundated with gophers. And there's a great bit in the film where he comes out with this line, I have to think like an animal and whenever possible look like one. The idea is that we shy away from the complexity, we shy away from the challenge. Why aren't people buying my things? Why can't I do this at greater scale, whatever it may be? And we need to honor that complexity and that difficulty. And we need to, again, be curious. We need to be confident in coming alongside the complexity and spending time with it, instead of being overwhelmed by it, running away from it, and ignoring it. So, connection, complexity, and autonomy, which you also spoke about, Lizzie. The craftsperson takes responsibility for his or her craft. They are accountable to themselves through reflection, and they're accountable to their peers. If you think about the guild sector again, to markets and patrons. I think it's an amazing thing, like the Patreon scheme on social media. So some of the folk who I watch on YouTube, where they have a Patreon scheme, and it's a curious throwback again, like to the guild system. The idea that you've got someone who has a craft, whether it's like the making content, or whether it's the material that they're creating content about, and they will go to the market and they will seek Patreons, who will then like pay them, whether it's like $1, £1, or £5, £10 a month, to support them in that endeavor to build their craft. It's just a lovely throwback. But we are accountable as craftspeople. If we are all craftspeople, if we're all going to get artisan, we are all accountable to ourselves. Do not complain about the economy. Don't complain about the government. Don't complain about inflation as reasons why you're not getting to do the work that you want to do. You can if you want, but if you do, you disempower yourself. Because as long as it's those external things that you can't do a thing about, you're never going to get progress. And you might feel better for it. Well, it's not my fault. I'm not to blame for this, but you disempower yourself. So remain autonomous. The mediators. I'm a lawyer. I did a lot of work training mediators, and this demonstrates a problem. For a long time, when mediation first came out 15 years ago, probably a bit longer than that, mediators had that same problem. Why can't we get more people to come to mediation? Mediation is where you've got the mediator, then you've got a divorcing couple, and the mediator, if you like, referees, umpires the discussions between the separating couple. And the mediators wanted to do more of this work because they really believed in it, and they said, why can't we get more? And they blamed the government. Well, the problem is the government isn't giving us enough support, they said. The government isn't giving us enough support. Everyone just assumes you've got to go and see a solicitor or go to court, and they pretty much got what they wished for. They wanted the government to provide funding for mediation. Cause for celebration? Maybe. I suggest maybe not. Mediation then became, if you like, the state sector resolution process. So legal aid was available, public funding. If you went to mediation, you would get the government to pay for some mediation work. But the problem is, because it's state sector, of course, they've got to be very careful about expenditure of public funds. And so typically, mediation became a very restricted offering where it was maybe 3 sessions at most. And then after that, the mediator's like, well, there's no more funding. And so mediation very much became this very bare bones offering instead of this real craft that it's got the potential to be. Mediation would become, first meeting would be orientation, second meeting would be disclosure, third meeting would be, okay, what are we going to do? What agreement are we going to reach? And like when you're unraveling a 20-year marriage, that's brutal. It needs to be much more nuanced and sophisticated. So be careful what you wish for. Don't look externally, work it out for yourself. And let the value of the work define itself. I loved what we were talking about earlier about the race to the bottom. Don't do that. For the cost-conscious client, you will never be cheap enough. Yeah. Don't compete on cost. Instead, compete on the brilliance of your work and make sure that you communicate that brilliance on your social media, on your websites, whatever it is, your blog articles. Put your artisanship up front. Let them know the complexities that you're dealing with. Let them know about the materials that you're using and why they really work. In the words of John Ruskin, I'll finish here in just a moment. Are there any questions before I just go on to my closing slide? Any questions? I'm here this evening as well, so feel free to ask. John Ruskin, this is what he says. John Ruskin wrote a book called The 7 Lamps of Architecture. Remember, this is the Jeremy Clarkson chap. And I love this phrase. I've written it down because I don't want to do it wrong. I want to do it justice. So the 7 lamps of architecture, he's talking about historic architecture and the craftsmanship within buildings, and he's bemoaning, if you like, modern architecture. This is 19th century modern architecture, but this applies to what we're doing. He says, all old work has been hard work. It may be the hard work of children, of barbarians, of rustics, but it is always their utmost. Ours has as constantly the look of money's worth, of a stopping short wherever and whenever we can, of a lazy compliance with low conditions, never of a fair putting forth of our strength. He goes on, let us have done with this kind of work. Let us have done with this kind of work at once. Cast off every temptation to do it. Let us confess our poverty and our parsimony, but let's not belie our human intellect. It is not even a question of how much we are to do, but how it is to be done. It's not a question of doing more, but of doing better. That's what John Ruskin's got to say. That's what I would exhort each and every one of you to do. Get curious. What does the Artisan mindship look like in your world? Feel free to get in touch with me. If you're interested in the League of Not Knowing, give me a shout. Those are my contact details. You can find me on LinkedIn. Give me a call, whatever works. Thank you very much.